And here we are. Welcome, Dr. Regina Edmond. So great to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So I can give a bio and background about you, but I'd love to know how you define yourself. Tell us about you.
Wow, this is such an open-ended question that, I'll leave it sort of focused along the parts of authenticity. So I chose a career in ob-gyn as a medical professional, and I chose it because it sort of exemplified my expression of who I am and what it was that I was seeking to express in the world. I was raised in a house with women. We were all together. My dad was outside of the home at the time for the most part. And so it was learning each other, learning myself. And then I went to an all-girls school, Spelman College, very proud graduate. And that was an all-women's environment as well. And so it became, wow, this is very, second nature to me, but what can I learn from it? What can I learn about myself? What can I learn about other women and interacting, what our needs are, what our struggles are, and where do I fit in the midst of that? And so at the same time, as I'm having these sort of social experiences, learning myself, I became interested in medicine and science. And so those two really merged for me in a very surprising way, because it's not always conscious to me, the impact of your environment for many of us. I would imagine that ultimately when I was in OB/GYN, the course where you observe people doing deliveries and C-sections and all the other components of women's care, that it just clicked like a puzzle piece that told me that even though they just dissuaded you, it's going to be so difficult. Like, this is it. This is the thing I love. And then from that came, I know what my stamp is going to be in this profession, where I make it my goal to create a safe space for women, because it's very important, especially in the statistics where it says every 2 out of 3 women has to deal with sexual assault or abuse in some way. And so many of us hold that and they don't share it. And to be able to create a safe space at least gives women an opportunity to be transparent, forthcoming, share a tear if they need to. And so that was really sort of how that all came to be. So when people ask me, how'd you do it? Why did you do it? This is why.
How wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And how do you see yourself going forward in the future? What's the vision for the next phases of your career path?
That's an excellent question. I've spent 20 years of my professional life doing really one-on-one caring, problem solving, creating treatment plans for patients. And it's been fulfilling and wonderful, and I still love it deeply. But I want to expand my outreach. I realize that, being in this small area of Los Angeles, that there's such a larger world out there who is in need and could benefit. So my larger goal is to either do public speaking, writing, podcasts, to really continue to get that word out in a way, in a space where there's a need, and it still exists, even though there's lots of doctors out there, lots of practitioners, there's still a need for my unique way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, what I know about you, since we have been working together for the past year plus, is you have a strong practice that's not just physical, but it's very spiritual. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. But I like to go back a little bit, like,
Yeah.
well, why spiritual? What's the difference? Just get up and read the newspaper and go to work like everybody else does.
Exactly.
And I've learned over time that how would I put it? That when I interact with people, there is a energy flow that happens, and I treat that energy flow with such reverence, because the person that comes to me has a history and is coming to me in the present with a desire to communicate whatever that need is. And so it stemmed from that, like, what's happening when this person comes to me as Dr. Edmond for a need? And then I decided to go a little further, like, well, what can I bring? How do I show up? And it was in that space of, I want to show up as my best self, that kind of took me to, like, okay, well, how do we do that? Like, and so that's the question, kind of open-ended.
Yeah.
And then parallel to that, so we have be your best self, whatever that means. And then I had a sort of a church spiritual practice, sort of a non-traditional Christian upbringing, where I was fortunate to be able to see dozens of different religions without any judgment or restriction or anything in my household. So that really gave an opening to me to be able to go, well, what feels right for me to be my best self? And so as a result of that, I get up, the first thing on my mind is prayer, and not to limit the definition of what spirituality means to people, but I call it God. It can have 1,000 different names. So not to disrespect those who don't use that term, but, you know, I go there and I go to the quiet place. I have some movement routine that goes with that, some breathing, some singing, some chanting, and then I feel connected. I feel supported in the me that I bring, because I'm supported by that sort of invisible supportive force.
It's amazing. It's so all encompassing too. And I love, you have just such an amazing level of awareness. I'm always just in admiration of that. How did you get there?
Well, it all starts from day one, you know, and the story that people tell you about yourself helps you to answer some of the questions within. Sure. If anyone is like me, they've always wondered, like, well, who am I? Why am I here? And what am I supposed to be doing? And that's been a question for me since I was very young. But my family really enjoyed telling me stories, because as they watched me grow, apparently I was, you know, something of a story, like tell me. And I'll never forget my mother telling me that ever since before I had language, whenever she would look at me, I was always looking around to see my environment. So it began pre-verbal. What's out there? What can I see with my eyes? Asking the question, what are these things? And then as I learn more, you learn, okay, there is an awareness. Okay, I'm aware. It seemed to me, based on her description, that I was maybe hyper aware. And so you go, all right. And then I'm a scientist. I call myself the curious scientist, because I'm always asking the question, well, why is that? Where is that? And my parents got so tired of me because I'd always ask them questions they could not answer. So continue spurring me on my current professional path. However, so you say, all right, so awareness, it started very early.
Yeah. And it sounds like that title that you have for yourself, that curious scientist, it like breeds awareness in some ways. It's like a mode of being that just kind of keeps you in awareness. Does that resonate? Interesting.
I guess you're right, because how else do you expand awareness other than by asking the question?
Yeah.
Which pushes you out of your current paradigm, right? If you say, oh, I already know, then you're limited. There's nothing more to receive in terms of adding to what you already are aware of. So you're right.
Yeah.
Good point.
And it's such a beautiful, I love, because you have curiosity and you have like science to validate whatever it is, right?
Sure. But I like to bridge the two,
right?
Where there's a space where you have the science, which is backed by scientific research and study. And then you have the less form, the amorphous, I'll call it, the spiritual. And that has been the dichotomy that I move through in all all of my life.
Sure.
So you'll have the concrete and then you'll have the invisible. And perhaps that is the space between where I draw my awareness, because I don't simply lean on or wholeheartedly accept as universal one particular modality. So you say, this is a phone. I am looking at the phone as I speak to you. That's it. Like, well, how does the message get there? And in that question itself, you begin to think outside of it and go, wow, that's amazing. Is there energy in the air? What's happening? How's that working? And then that spurs on more and more questions, which brings you to a new awareness.
Yeah. How beautiful. It's cool to see kind of the inner workings of your mind and how you've, processed things.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. And I'm sure, and I know your patients love you and just adore you. So they must enjoy all of this as well.
So yeah, it's the rare patient that gets to see this. We stay really focused on what their needs are.
Sure.
And so this would probably be very interesting to my patients to observe me describing, my awareness and how I approach the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they feel it, like you're working in such an intimate space with them. So you are so keenly attuned to their sensitivity. Like you said, the story that they come in, you can probably perceive it in a way that's probably subconscious to them, but very conscious to you. You know what I mean?
I absolutely do. And sometimes I'll sit in the space and in a very receptive way, pick up on energies that they haven't said verbally and will help direct my questioning, which really gets to the answer. Like, what's the main deal? So,
yeah. It's an amazing way to bridge worlds. Mm-hmm. So I love that you said you're kind of navigating between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Has it been challenging at any point for you to navigate between, the practical and the spiritual?
Of course. I mean, it's like, it's a struggle because there's no rules. Well, there's an unspoken rule where you must follow the paradigm, the existing paradigm that says, follow this rule. And so I did that and I realized I wasn't really being myself.
Interesting.
I challenged it and I asked the question, if I choose to follow the rule universally, like this is the phone and there's nothing else, how will people respond to me? And I realized that people did not respond to me when I was not being authentic, because authentically me is bridging those two worlds and really merging them into who I am with that unique stamp in the world, which I think we all have if we're willing. And I think courageous, and I put an exclamation on courageous because it takes a lot of courage to step out of that space and go, well, I'm just going to do it my way with respect, but I'm going to do it my way. Yeah. And took a few years for me to really move into that and then gain enough experience with it to be comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you brought up courage because I agree. I think being your authentic self can be very scary, and it's a choice that you make every day. Because it's easy to go back into whatever old paradigm that's comfortable and familiar and everyone likes it. Courage is definitely necessary. And then do you notice it changes with you over time as you do it more, as you're more authentic?
Sure, because then you start to see reflections of yourself in others. And like, as you move up the rungs of the ladder of your own life, you go, well, is there more?
Yeah.
And then you see someone expressing it in a new way and you're like, yes. And then you say to yourself, well, where can I go with this?
Yeah.
How much more can I say yes to? And I think it's saying yes to yourself also in the midst of your courage, to continue to embody it.
Yeah. I love it. What are some ways you're embodying, like any Anything cool you want to share?
Well, I've always loved performing arts, and those who have been under my care know that I love to sing. But many people do not know that I enjoy dance equally as much. And so one of the ways that I continue to expand myself is by challenging what I think I can do. So I start, during COVID, I started doing ballet in the living room, buying a ballet bar, turning on YouTube, and like connecting again to that physical part of myself that allows me to feel so free and so open and fully expressing myself. Something that's what I consider ballet to be. So I really enjoy that. That's one way.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. It's such a cool expression. And what does it do for the rest of your day? What does it do for your life?
So I feel really affirmed. I feel affirmed physically, like in my body, like you're real, you're strong, you're flexible. And if you can do ballet, you can do anything. It's hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that I really enjoy about it, because it pushes you to be your best physically. And so the physical mirroring sort of my mental way of disciplining, it just works really well. I enjoy it.
That's amazing. Yeah. All the levels work together, right? Is there anything you do for your mental self? Because I know a lot of us, we can get stuck in our minds and it prevents us from taking steps forward. Is there anything that helps you with the mental space?
Well, I love solving puzzles. Is that a cliche? I don't know.
No,
it's like brain games, puzzles.
Oh, cool.
I will not disclose what kinds of puzzles, but jigsaw puzzles are great. Word searches are great. Phone apps are great. And so whenever I have time to engage, either short term or for long term, we'll break out the 5,000 piece puzzle and just go for it for a few days, or do something shorter term on my phone. But it's a daily. It's a daily. And once you read that doing brain games helps to prevent things like dementia and Alzheimer's, if there's anything I can do to keep my mind vibrant and alive, I want to do it. So
yeah, those are such healthy tools. Like I think a lot of people can relate to that, and it's a very simple way to be engaged in the world and use your mind. Yeah,
sure, absolutely.
So coming back to authenticity, and you outlined your path, and it sounds so simple, but I know there's a lot of steps that have gone into it, because that's how it goes, right? I'd love to hear more if there's ever been a time where you were in the opposite realm. You were so inauthentic to who you were, and how that felt.
So instead of calling it inauthentic, I'd rather call it distracted.
Okay, I like that.
Distracted by the anguish of life. Distracted by things that happen in families or at work, or things that just really can bring you down. I think it has taken me, and experiences in my life, it has taken me from my authenticity. And I'll call it sad, but I'll call it sad temporarily, because the sadness is that you make choices that as you move through them, and then by grace or by the awareness dawning in your consciousness, you move out of them, you look at it like, why did I do that? How could I do that? And then you're like, well, it was there to take you to a new level of consciousness and a new level of authenticity or awareness. And so you talk about, I'm not unique in that way. We all have challenges. And I look at them differently now, as you reframe it, as we talk of it here, you say, oh gosh, the challenges of life. And I made all these, we'll call them, dumb choices, or however we, say these words to ourselves, which aren't true, which are not dumb. They're just the decisions we make at that time. But then if you pull back, you can see, oh my gosh, I would have never been able to gain this skill had I not made that choice at that time. So, having those challenges in life gives you a new frame, a new reframe to make that next step on the rung of life.
I love it. I love that you called it a distraction, and it's so perfect. That's spot on.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get distracted, whether it's, I don't know, there's name how many distractions there are in the world at any moment.
Sure.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said. Yeah, how do you allow for that, I guess? Because I'm hearing, there's always going to be distractions. There's no question. And then we're always going to try to remain on our authentic path. How do you balance the two?
Good question, Lisa.
Right?
I mean, wow, and I look back, you say, if you were to ask me the question, would you have traded your distractions? Absolutely not. They were painful. They were soul wrenching, all of those things. But I'm so grateful for each and every one of them. And so it's almost like the analogy of going into the wilderness and being lost among the trees. What do you learn when you're there? You learn a lot more about trees than you might have ever learned. So, my perspective on life has really changed so much as I mature, and use each of those experiences, each of those what we'll call forest experiences.
Like that.
Yeah, to use them for what they are for, and to come through them and to not get lost. I think that's the trick. That's the trick, and the thing that people always applaud. You made it out of the forest. We can name 100 examples of people that we hold up because they made it out.
Yeah.
And making it out, I'm learning, is not automatic.
Yeah.
Making it out takes conscious, deliberate effort and daily decision making, where I'll call it self-love, self-care, self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
And then you're able to see the pathway when you were already there. It's like the one Wizard of Oz, we call it. It's like you were already on the path right there, but you were lost.
Yeah.
And then you found your way out. So for all of us, it's like, sit there, have the moment, have it in its fullest, be completely lost.
Yeah.
And then once you're completely lost, a ray of sun somehow will find its way if you have the intention to find your way out.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that analogy. I love that so much for a lot of reasons, but I think there's such purpose in that divine chaos and that getting lost. And it's like it opens you more, you're reduced down to so little that you can't say no. You just receive.
Sure. Oh, wow. Wow. I don't know. Do you just receive?
Well, not always.
I kind of disagree, because I'm using the example of those of us in our lives, we've seen it, that can't get out of the forest. I don't call it a divine. I call it very carnal. It's very concrete. You're in the forest. You have no way out. The trees are everywhere. The ground is covered with leaves. You don't know where you are.
Yeah.
And there's a bear growling in the woods, and you don't know how to climb a tree. That's what it feels like when you're in the forest.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's not until you figure out how to hide behind a tree or climb a tree, that's where you set the intention, in that moment where you're like, I have to get out of here. The bear will eat me. And then you go, oh, I do have something inside me that will help me get out of the forest. I think that's the awakening. It awakens you from within.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're able to see that divine sun, that divine light. But it has to start inside of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we can all relate to those moments of feeling despair, maybe, and just not knowing what to do.
Sure.
Yeah. I know.
To take a breath on that, that was really, I felt myself in the wilderness.
Yeah. I know. And does it get easier as you go through each forest?
Well, you know what happens as you get better. You know this. You get better, and so do your challenges. I think as we mature and you have better skills at navigating those challenges, because even though they're different, they're not new. They're just different. And with the same skill set, that same self-reflection, self-love, self-forgiveness, I think you can move through any challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that those are like the healing salves after you come out. Mm-hmm. The quicker you apply that self-forgiveness, that self-love, it doesn't sting as much.
Sure. Yeah, but I think it needs to be applied as you're trying to find your way. Because if you think about it, what changes this? What turns the light switch on for you to go, this is ridiculous, I got to get out of here? Right. It's not until something inside you goes, you're worth more than that. You deserve the best. You are the best. And it's those kinds of energies connected to those words that then go, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Right? Before you can say consciously, what am I doing here? All those levels had to wake up. That's how
I like that. Yeah. And then they're awakened, right? So then the next challenge comes and it's a little bit like, okay, I know what to do.
That's right.
I've got that skill set.
That's right.
Beautiful. So how do you stay in your authenticity? What are, you talked about a little bit of some practices, but maybe there's some deeper things or some other things that are interesting to share.
I celebrate my uniqueness.
Oh.
It's simple. How do I stay in my authenticity? I stay with the thing that makes me different. It's like, what about you is different? It used to be that by not straightening my hair, that was very different. Now it is very commonplace. And so that was one of my trademarks. And, me being above average height woman, for whom everyone who came to speak to me goes, do you play sports? Absolutely not. No, that is a mark of my authenticity, to be clear in who I am and not to be influenced by any stereotype. Yeah. So, and just continuing to find ways to celebrate the part of me that, my sense of humor, I think, is very unique and wonderful.
Yeah.
And so that's in short how I stay on my authentic path.
I love it. Do you ever kind of reclaim when people ask you questions like this? Like, for example, the question I've heard most my whole life, it used to be like, what are you mixed with? Because I don't look like most people. So they're always curious. And it used to be, what nationality are you? And I had to correct people and say, I'm American, but you probably mean, what ethnicity are you? And I'll give you 3 guesses. So I made it a game because it was just such a common question. I had to reframe it for myself.
Sure.
And have fun with it.
Sure.
Do you have any, because you have a great sense of humor. I envision you'd have some fun responses.
Well, yeah, they used to always ask me if I play basketball, but that's not it. It's the one where they go, you look like so-and-so. And back at the beginning of the Obama administration, I had the walk, I had the hair, oh my goodness, you look so much like Michelle Obama, so I was like, okay, thank you.
Thank you, yes.
And so it got to a point where it's like, you look like so and so was so commonplace that I was like, I think I have a few twins out there, a few people that look like me.
Yeah.
And so it just became just a way of just keeping it light. And, you know, hearing what people were really saying was, your energy is so familiar. I must know you.
Yes.
You remind me of someone that I should know or that I am comfortable with. And that's how I take it.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I see it in the same way. It's like there's a familiarity and a desire to connect. So if someone outreaches in that way,
sure, absolutely,
to meet them and just connect with them.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's funny. I like that.
Yes.
Well, wonderful. Anything else to share or to say or comment on?
Well, I encourage all of those who may hear this message to continue to limit your exposure to the messages that tell you who to be, the messages that tell you what's right and what's wrong. I mean, we know we don't want to break any laws, but in terms of how to dress, how to present yourself, you know, we're so fortunate to live in a time where you can practice being whoever you are. You can love whoever you want to love. And if that starts with loving you, then authenticity is sure to follow. So I encourage everyone listening.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yay.
Thanks for being here.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Truly.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.